Hello F1 fans and welcome to F1 On and Off the Track with Kim Illman. You can see his photos at prostarpics.com or follow him on Instagram at Kim Illman. My name is Adrian and in this episode we're talking about the Russian GP that just went past this weekend.
In Sochi, where it was sunny for Saturday and Sunday, quite beautiful.
And how did the race turn out for your shots this week?
Race was interesting. I remember thinking at one stage that Sebastian Vettel drove past me very slowly, and I thought at that point, oh, maybe there's a safety car, and then the next car came past at race speed, and I thought, oh, hello, he's in trouble there. And then, of course, I look up at the screen and find out that he's pulled over, he's retired, and a very sad end for Ferrari for him for that race, and also Charles, of course, having started on pole, settling for second for a few laps until they were going to swap back, he and Vettel. And then, of course, he falls in a screaming heap and comes third after the Mercedes trumped them again. So things have returned to normal in F1.
Well, speaking of Seb, there was a moment this weekend where he was playing rock, paper, scissors.
That was funny, you know. I went outside the paddock and I found where the drivers parked their cars. I waited for a few of them, and he parked his car and started walking, and there was only two people around. There was a woman and a man, and then me photographing it. And this guy starts playing rock, paper, scissors with him about 75 metres from me, up until a point when they're about 20 metres from me. And they just keep playing and playing, and I gather it's his wife. She was videoing the whole thing, and they finished playing, and I walked with Seb for about 20 metres and just said, well, what was going on there? And he said, oh, the guy just wanted to play rock, paper, scissors with me. And I asked him how he fared, and he said, oh, he beat me 3-0. So that was on race day, so it turned out to be a little bit of an omen for him, a bad start with the rock, paper, scissors and a bad start in the race. And then I went back to the guy, and I asked him his name and where he's from, and he spoke a bit of English, which was great. And he said, yeah, I decided I want to play rock, paper, scissors with him, and he was happy to oblige. So that's the sort of stuff that you don't get to see very often, but when you do and you get to photograph it, it's quite interesting.
In what seems to be a reoccurring event, Daniel Kvyat this time has flipped you the bird?
Well, yeah, once I was out the front of the paddock there waiting for cars to come in, he and Stuart, his trainer, drove past me, and I didn't have a camera anywhere near my face, but I just look at these two guys through the window, and they've both got their fingers up and big funny smiles at me, and I thought, well, I'm too close to shoot it, and I thought that was quite funny. And then they parked their car, and I thought, great, they're going to walk down the middle of this road, which is lightly travelled in beautiful sun, and I'll get the shot that I want. I'll shoot low so that I get background of sky instead of the background of the ugly buildings behind. But they see me, and for a bit of fun, they'll go right next to the hoardings, the fence, the signage, which is a shocking shot. It's in shade, and I did have a chat with Stuart, his Daniil's trainer, on a flight last night, and we were talking about fun stuff that happens, and he says they quite like joking around with the photographers. It's a bit of a game now to see if they can do funny things and get away with it without being shot. He also mentioned that both Daniel and Daniil have a good friendship, and Daniel actually in one of the practice sessions pulled up outside the front of Daniil's garage while Daniil was still in the garage looking out, and they were flipping the bird at each other there, having a bit of a laugh for a few seconds while Daniel was getting ready to do a practice start in pit lane. So as you know, they were teammates, and they actually shared trainers. Stuart was Daniel's trainer for some years and is now working with Daniil, so he likes the Danny connection, I gather. But a good fella, Stuart, 6'2", heralds from Brisbane, and is highly regarded as a trainer.
Speaking of clowning around in the paddock, Lando was also clowning around, I believe.
Yeah, he was. I was up on the first floor of the media centre, and I was just looking at what was going on, and I thought, I'll take a different angle. I'll shoot from a story up of the drivers going across to their garages, and Lando came out of his, and there was a guy videoing, I imagine, for his social media or for something. And first of all, he's gone straight over to the guy and sort of had a bit of a play fight with him, and then he's taken off in front of this guy walking, and he had a rain jacket on, and he pulls it right up so it covers all of his face, and he just walked along looking like a penguin to my liking, and made his way to the garage. I thought that was funny, but I also took another shot of him later, and I took a comparative shot of his teammate Carlos Sainz walking to the garage. Carlos had his undershirt sleeves pulled up a little bit so you could see probably 15 centimetres of his wrist, whereas Lando had his pulled completely down over his knuckles and looked like a schoolboy heading to school. So there was a good comparison shot I put up on Instagram. I think that was Saturday.
Let's turn the focus back to the race for a moment. How was the Parc Ferme shoot?
A little bit sad for Charles because obviously he was favourite to win and really should have won. But Lewis, of course, was jumping out of his skin as usual. I managed to get a reasonable spot there and took some good shots of that. But I want to hark back to quali on Saturday because for the first time ever, I didn't go out and shoot the cars on track because you get an 18-minute session followed by a 15-minute session. You've got to get out to some part of the track. You get maybe 30 minutes of shooting, and then you've got to head back. You never see Q3 anyway. So this time I thought, bugger it, I'll stay in the paddock and I'll watch what goes on with drivers. And of course, Albon crashed out in Q1, so I got some shots of a despondent Alex walking back down the paddock. Then they all go into the TV interview pen, and there was some beautiful light, and I was just in one spot, and I realised that if I just waited for the drivers to walk through this one spot, they would be lit from the side with gorgeous late afternoon sun, part of their body, most of their body in darkness, but just this rim lighting of really lovely orange light. So I was quite happy to sit there and get some great driver portraits and let everyone else go out and shoot the cars on track.
Now, Kim, what is a sleep ring?
Funny you should mention that, and I gather you've seen the Instagram post. That's what's probably raised your interest. I had no idea either until I was photographing Daniel Ricciardo walking in the paddock, and I was walking backwards. He's walking towards me, and I probably stay with him for about 25 seconds walking backwards, all the time, of course, looking over your shoulder every now and then so you don't go arse over tit. And he started talking to me about a sleep ring, which I had no idea what it was. I did some research later. But I think one of the journalists asked him about it. It might have been Ziggo TV's Jack asked him about this sleep ring. And then, of course, the people think, hello, he's got engaged or married, and the internet chats, or Daniel's got married or whatever. That wasn't the case, but a sleep ring, I understand, allows you to monitor what's happening with your sleep pattern. And I think he was wearing it during the day and had maybe been photographed or certainly been questioned about it, but that put all of his female fans, I imagine, on high alert.
And what about his sparkly helmet?
Oh, geez, it looked beautiful. It had a lovely glitter finish on it. And I took some shots of him in the grid getting out of the car, and we had some lovely light on Sunday because you've got to understand the paddock has these very tall 3-storey buildings, both sides of it. So most of the day it's in shade. And when you're taking photos of drivers, yes, the light is nice and even on their face, but it's not direct sunlight and it's not golden. So I was really quite happy to get out there on the grid and shoot them in beautiful light. And the drivers' parade was also excellent because they were coming towards me, and I positioned myself so that they did walk towards the light. And using an 85mm lens at something like f1.4 and using a polarizer gave me these gorgeously rich, sumptuous-looking photos with white, fluffy clouds in the background. And at the time of taking the shots, I thought, oh, gee, I would love this to be the light you had every single time.
So last year you got a shot of Vladimir Putin looking directly at you. Did you see him again this year?
It was actually in 2017, and no, I did ask on the grid one of my F1 people. I said, is Mr. Putin coming? In fact, I couldn't ask because it was noisy, so I just typed it out and showed him. And my mate just shook his head and said, no, not coming, which is unfortunate because I was in the right spot to be able to shoot him behind the podium where he is semi-private and can act a little bit without public interest or public eyes on him. But no, that wasn't the case. He didn't arrive, and I think he had his second in command there, but nobody wants number 2. They want number 1, and he wasn't there.
F1 On and Off the Track is presented by ProStarPics.com. Stunning F1 photos live from the track, searchable and downloadable for personal or editorial use. Head to ProStarPics.com at the end of this podcast.
There's a photo on Instagram of someone holding up 3 pens.
That's Ted Kravitz. He's a journo, well, he's a TV presenter and highly regarded, very relaxed sort of guy. Always wears a lot of sunscreen, known by the British and loved by the British people. He was, I saw these 3 pens and I stopped and had a chat with him, and he held them up for me and took a nice photo of him. He was going to do something on one of the windows of the hospitality suites where he would mark the different tyres. And, of course, there's 3 different tyre colours, and that's what his marker pens were for. But he was prepping for it and making some notes, and it's good to find out what's going on with these people. I tend to look for that sort of stuff. The stuff that nobody else bothers with is the stuff that I tend to lap up, like women of the paddock. I'm not sure too many people focus on just good-looking women or well-dressed women in the paddock, but yeah, it's my little forte, and it tends to be one of my most popular posts. I put today's up, being Monday. We're recording this on Monday, and yeah, that post will get out to about 220,000 people, and it's amazing how quickly, because I should say that I get most people's names, but sometimes I don't get a chance to get some people's names. But within hours of it being up, I can always identify who a certain woman is, because someone would have recognised them, tagged them, and that's the power of social media, that you don't have to know certain things because the general public does a lot of the work for you.
Speaking of women of the paddock, what kind of women did you have in it this time?
I had Federica Maslin and Mara San Giorgio from Sky Italia. Federica had a beautiful top on. Mara blew me a kiss and looked rather snug on the day we had rain. I had a woman whose first name is Vicky. She's a local. She has 4.8 million followers and was the guest of Lewis Hamilton's. And I'm not sure how close of friends they are, but yeah, they were certainly thick during the race. She was his guest. Then we had Bernie Eccleston's lovely wife, Fabiana, who is always lovely, looks classy. I separated her from her husband for a moment to get a one-on shot with her. A couple of girls who work for the Sochi Autodrome, and just some other well-presented ladies that I've managed to come across in my travels.
I noticed one little Women of the Post picture went up of a 2-year-old.
Well, yeah, I didn't actually put her in the Women of the Paddock post, but there was this lovely youngster, and her swing tag around her neck, her pass, was almost as tall as she was. And I found her in the paddock, so I got low and shot with a wide-angle lens, and she was somewhat bemused as to what I was doing. She was 2, she'd been to 3 races before, and her mother worked for the event organiser, and managed to snag a pass for both of them into the paddock.
Now, Gunther Steiner is a bit of a hit on your Instagram page.
Yeah, Gunther runs Haas Racing, and I love him. He's a funny guy. Certainly in press conferences, he makes people laugh, but I shot him a couple of times during the weekend. I put up one post of him, and I noticed he saw it and liked it and made a comment, which is nice. But yesterday I put up a post saying, who's cooler, Cyril from Renault or Gunther from Haas? And he won hands down, 4-1, I think it was running at. I think people just like his honest attitude. The fact that he calls it as he sees it, he swears a little bit. He's got this marvellous English accent because his first language is... Now, what is his first language? Somebody told me he's Italian, but I should do some research on that. But certainly his English accent is interesting for those who speak English as a first language, and just a great character. In fact, I walked with him for a little bit after I shot him, and I said, by the way, I do like photographing you. Your wrinkles give your face great character, which he took as a compliment. It took him a second or so to realise I wasn't having a go at him, but... yeah, I sat and listened to him talk to a whole lot of corporate people out the front of his hospitality suite on Sunday morning. And I just spent about 10 minutes listening to him, and he speaks with such passion, and he's a lovely guy to be around. So I'd like to have dinner with him one night. I think he'd be a fun partner.
Over the last few weeks, Kim, you've been putting up wallpapers on Instagram. Can you tell us about this?
I get lots of people requesting, or about 8-10 weeks ago, I started getting people requesting wallpapers. Now, I must admit, I'm not that au fait with Instagram. I've come to know a fair bit about it, but apparently these things are highly sought after for people to use on their phones as backgrounds. So I've started putting them up as full screens, and I pick a driver every now and then. I'll put up a Charles and then Sebastian. This morning, I just put up one from Antonio Giovinazzi, because I'll be honest with you, he's probably at the bottom end of my most popular drivers to put up. And I thought, right, I've got to start focusing on the non-Charles, the non-Lewis, the non-Sebs, the non-Daniels, because they're the ones that I have most followers of on the page. And so when you put up a picture of Charles or Daniel, it just goes crazy. 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 likes. Now I'm working on fostering better followings of those lesser drivers, and Antonio is certainly one of those. He's popular. amongst the Italians, certainly. And he's a good-looking guy. Whether he's going to be there next year, I don't know. Actually, I'll dart off into a different tack now that you've brought that up. I was photographing Nico Hülkenberg coming into the paddock, and I noticed he stopped at the hospitality suite, the Renault suite, and he had a chat with Dieter Renken. Now, Dieter is a highly regarded journalist in the F1 arena, and I thought it's not a friendly chat, but it's not angry. It was, I think Nico was a little bit unhappy with something and wanted some answers. And I got talking to Dieter later on, and I said, what was that about? He said, well, Nico, he said, I put up a story saying that there was a rumour that Nico was going to Formula E, and he wanted to know where the story came from. And Dieter said, well, look, if you tell me it's true, I'll tell you where it came from. I won't tell you the person, but where it came from. And he said, well, I'm not going to say yes or no. So obviously Nico doesn't have a drive for next year, and there is speculation that he will either go to perhaps Alfa Romeo for Giovinazzi's seat, maybe Williams, or perhaps go to Formula E. I hope he stays in F1, quite frankly, because I think he's a good character for the sport, and I'll be disappointed if I didn't get to photograph him and his girlfriend, Sunny, at the track in 2020.
Now, Kim, where am I talking to you from?
Well, I know where you're talking to me from. You're talking to me from the studio in Perth, but I'm sitting here in Singapore Airport. I've just done a 10.5 hour from Russia. I left Moscow, in the middle of the afternoon. I'm back here at 6 a.m. in the morning. Then I head to Perth for a week exactly, and then we're off to Japan for a single race and then back to Perth. So it's all fun and games, and that will be round, what is that? We've got 5 more to go. We've got a single and then 2 doubles to go, and that wraps up season 2019.
Well, thank you very much for your time today, Kim.
Pleasure. I'm going to go and have a quick snack and then walk another half a mile to a plane.
To see any of the photos we've talked about today, head over to prostarpics.com or kimillman.com. You can also stay updated by following Kim on Instagram at kimillman. And if you like what you heard today, please give us a review and remember to hit subscribe to stay posted for our next episode. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you on and off the track.
F1 On and Off the Track was presented by prostarpics.com. Stunning F1 photos live from the track, searchable and downloadable for personal or editorial use. prostarpics.com. Head there now.